Okay, in my first videos, I sounded like an alien, and in that first video for this section, I made a lot of mistakes. So hopefully we're getting it together, and from here on out, it's going to be smooth sailing. All right, this next question is going to be solving, and it's going to be x squared minus 3 is equal to negative 2x. Now, whenever we have a problem like this, the first thing we want to do is, because we notice that it's a quadratic, so we need this to equal 0. So I'm going to add 2x to both sides so that the right side equals 0. I'll get x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Now, on the left-hand side, I'm going to factor, and so I'm going to factor by doing, I'm going to break apart this term so that the two parts, when I multiply them together, equal 1 times negative 3. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3, so I need 1 times negative 3, so that whatever I multiply them, oh, that's going off the screen, sorry. All right, so 1 times negative 3 equals negative 3. And again, that's coming from 1 times negative 3. Right there. So whatever I break this apart into, it has to add together to give me positive 2, multiply together to give me a negative. Well, the only way that I can multiply together to give me a negative is if one of them is positive and one of them is negative. So let's see, if they have to add together to give me a positive, the bigger one needs to be positive. So negative 1 times positive 3 equals negative 3. And when I add a negative 1 and a positive 3, it equals 2. So we found one right away that works. So we have x squared minus 1x plus 3x minus 3 equals 0. So again, this right here, we got by splitting apart our middle term here. Any questions about splitting that apart? Okay. Now we're going to factor here, and we can factor out an x. X times the quantity x minus 1 plus factor out a 3 here. 3 times the quantity x minus 1 equals 0. Now we can factor out x minus 1 from each of these two terms, the quantity x minus 1. So we get the quantity x minus 1 times the quantity x plus 3 equals 0. So that's the factoring part. And the reason why we want to know how to factor is because when we have this times this, so we're multiplying those two binomials, when the result is 0, either the first part, x minus 1, has to equal 0, or the second part, x plus 3, has to be 0. If neither one of those things are 0, then when we multiplied them together, we couldn't get 0. It just wouldn't happen if neither of them are 0. So we're going to see how we can make what x has to be in order for one of them to be 0. Well, here we add 1, so we're really just solving here, and we get x equals 1. Here we subtract 3 to get x by itself, and x equals negative 3. So all we did was we said, listen, if this equals 0, then that means x has to equal 1. And if this equals 0, then that means x has to equal negative 3. Now, we probably could have seen that and known right away, that's fine. So the next step then is to say, all right, those are my two solutions, x equals 1 and x equals -3. I really should check to make sure that they are good solutions. So I plug, let me bring this down just a little bit because it's not visible. I plug 1 in for x, and then after that I'll plug -3 in for x. So in the original equation, I have 1 squared minus 3 is equal to -2 times 1. And so I'm checking my solution of 1. Well, 1 squared is 1 minus 3 equals -2 times 1 is -2. 1 minus 3 is -2, and that comes out to be true. So this is a good solution. Now we'll check the other one. So we have -3 squared minus 3 equals -2 times -3. Well, -3 squared is 9 minus 3 is equal to -2 times -3, that's 6. 9 minus 3, that's 6. Hey, look at that, they're both good solutions. So I solved correctly. So that's why factoring is useful, is because it allows us to solve quadratic equations. Now, sometimes factoring doesn't work. It's not going to work, and you know that's a problem. So let's talk about a situation like that. We have 2x squared plus 3x equals -8. Now, again, it's a quadratic, so we have to have one side equal to 0. So I'll add 8 to both sides, and I'll get 2x squared plus 3x plus 8 equals 0. Now, if I take the 2 and the 8 and I multiply those together, I get 16. And if I'm trying to break this 3x apart into two pieces that add together to give me 3 but multiply together to give me 16, it's not going to work. All I have is 1 times 3. That's the only factors of 3. So that doesn't even add to 3. Just a minute. 1 times 2 would be 2. Sorry. So if I want to make sure that I get a 3 when I add these together, I can't. It's just 1 times 2. I guess it could be -1 and -2, but then that would never add to or multiply to 16. So it just doesn't factor. So in this situation, we use the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is a great tool. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This should definitely be in your notes, no question about it. The a value is the leading coefficient. So here we have an a value of 2. And we can see that a occurs right there and down here. The b value is the +3, occurs there and there. And in this case, the b value is a +3. And the c value is +8, and it occurs right there. So now we just plug in those values into the quadratic equation, and we get x equals -b, well, b is 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 3 squared minus 4 times A. A is 2. Times C, C is 8. And we want to make sure that that square root goes all the way out over those. And that's going to be over 2 times A, which again is 2. Any questions about plugging in the values into the quadratic equation? Okay. So now I'm just going to focus on that quadratic equation there. And we'll get x equals -3 plus or minus the square root. 3 squared is 9 minus 4 times 2, that's, 4 times 2, that's 8. So this is 8. Times another 8 is 64. So that's going to be minus 64. So I just did 4 times 2 times 8 here. And that's all over 2 times 2 is 4. That first step simplifying, okay? Okay. Now, underneath the square root, 9 minus 64 is going to be a -55 all over 4. And when you see square root of a negative number, you should think, oh, I've got complex numbers happening here. And so I can rewrite this as -3. And then if we separate this -55, so this right here, it's going to be -1 times 55. And then we have 2 square roots, so that it's I times square root 55. So plus or minus I times square root 55 all over 4. And that is the exact solution. Does the part with the I, is that okay? Yeah? Okay, good. Is there any part of that that you'd like me to talk more about? Hey, I've gone past when I need to be, I was supposed to pick up my son. I gotta go, my friend. I will see you later.